Hello, happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It's Mrs. Evinger here, ready to finish reading the Coffin Quilt with you. I promised you that we would be done with it on time, and so we have about 50 pages left. It'll be a good chunk of reading, but we can do it. If you haven't already read all the way to the end, we're going to start on chapter 28 on page 175. And it is in the spring of 1886. So if you remember, chapter 27 was set in 1883. And Fanny found that Bill had frozen to death, plain as fiddle, at the gravesite of his brothers. And remember that Bill had a lot of guilt because he's the one who should have been killed, not Bud. Bud didn't do anything wrong on the election day. So we're going to pick up the story. And if you enjoy me reading to you trying to read it to you every night, but a few times a week, make sure you give this a like. That way I know if I need to continue as we continue reading Pride and Prejudice and some other novels this semester. So chapter 28, spring of 1886. What are you doing here, Fanny McCoy? Don't you go to school anymore? I turned from the long white pine counter at the Pikeville General Store. Nancy McCoy, a baby in her arms and a knee-high at her skirts. Hello, Nancy. Yes, I still go, but Ma's to stay the night with Martha. Oh, that's right. Your brother Jim moved his family to Saylorsville. Considerable smart of him. Keep his family safe. Her mouth quivered. I set down the goods I'd bought, some crackers, tallow candles, and coffee beans, and walked over to her. You have a new baby. Yes, this is Stella. She's 4 months old. Isn't she, darling? I took the baby up and admired it, but I was seeing Nancy. She was older, and it was downright eerie. Some of the old Nancy was still there in the face, but just when you glimpsed it, it was gone. The new Nancy was still pretty, but now there were lines around the mouth and something shadowy in the eyes. How is Jaunts? I handed the baby back. The mouth quivered again. I'm a-leaving him. Why else would I be in Kentucky? The beautiful violet eyes brimmed with tears, and she hugged her baby close. What happened, Nancy? What didn't happen? He's been drinking. When he's in his cups, those Hatfields can get him to do anything. His people beat up my sister Mary and her mother-in-law, Mrs. Daniels, in a masked raid. Left him bleeding and unconscious. Johnson's brother Cap was at the head of that. Mary's husband said so. I told Johnson I won't stay with him if his family hurts my family anymore. He promised they wouldn't. Then they went and killed my brother, Jeff. We'd heard about all that, of course. It was the reason Pa and my brothers Jim and Sam were off on a raid now in West Virginia, because of Jeff McCoy's death last week. It's why I was going to stay with Martha, because Jim would be away. Ro would be there, of course. That was another reason I was going. In the last 2 years, I'd seen my sister Ro maybe 4 times. We'd had a fight after Bill died. I blamed her for telling him a body could will themselves to die. Ma didn't know the reason for our fussing, but she'd finally said enough. There's feuding going on outside this family. We don't need to add to it. And then last night, Johns came in drunk and pointed a gun at me, Nancy was saying. I told him no more. It isn't bad enough his brother Cap shot my brother Jeff. Her voice trailed off, then picked up again. I'm sorry about your brother Bill dying and all. I haven't seen you since. Bill. Gone over 2 years now, but the pain inside was new every time somebody said his name. I blamed myself for Bill. I should have gone out that night and brought him home. Over and over again in my head the last 2 years, I'd asked myself why I hadn't. Why hadn't I gone against my family and been strong? Why hadn't I been strong enough, like Trinvilla? I have to go, Nancy. I picked up my old straw suitcase and my sack of goods. Martha and Ro will be along any minute to fetch me in the buggy. I wanted to get outside and away from her. I didn't want her following to give her howdy to Ro. I was on the outs with Ro, sure, but even I couldn't be the one to bring about a meeting between her and the woman who'd stolen away John's, even though it looked like Ro was well shut of him. Martha had a loom in the parlor. She said it was her great-grandmother's and was over 100 years old. It's a 4-harness loom, she told us. About a year ago, I got Jim to get it out of the barn and set it up for me. Here, I'm making this bed cover. We'd put the children to bed in the loft. Martha put up coffee. Until now, the little girls had kept us from talking of ourselves. Martha knew that Ro and I had been fussing. She knew this visit was a strain to me, but with her round, smiling face and sunny disposition, it was impossible to speak of trouble in front of Martha. She just wouldn't hold with it. The bed cover was red and white, the wild rose pattern. It's beautiful, I said. Don't you like quilts? Ro asked. Course I do, Martha said. But my grandmother Gertrude taught me to weave like this, and I'm making this to hand down to my daughters. An heirloom. I just love heirlooms. I wanted my quilt for my Sarah Elizabeth, Rose said, real sad-like. But now I don't know who I'll give it to. Fanny, most likely. I don't want it, I told her. Martha's innocent blue eyes went wide. Why, Fanny McCoy, what an awful thing to say. You should be honored to have your sister's quilt. I stared hard at Ro. It was clear that Martha knew nothing of the coffin quilt. I don't want it, I said again. I couldn't forgive Ro for putting Bill's coffin on the quilt. Martha put a hand on my arm. Honey, I know you two have been fussing, but don't let your dear mama hear you say that. It's cast her spirit down something awful. And don't ever say such in front of your brother Jim. Family's like religion to him. Why, Ro is putting love into every stitch of that quilt of hers, I wager. Just like I'm putting love into every thread of my coverlet. Love? I wanted to laugh. They stood, both of them, firm and set against me. How unfair of Ro, I thought. How dishonest. I loved Martha. I couldn't abide having her think ill of me, but she would now, and I couldn't explain. I think I'll go to bed, I said. Maybe you'd best, Martha said coldly, and think and pray on what you just said. This family needs to stick together, more now than ever before. There was a 3/4 moon, and its light came through the window of my small room, and I thought, that's what woke me. I'd been dreaming of Bill, dreaming that I was putting my coat on and going out the door to fetch him home. But when I went out the door, there was a posse waiting there in our yard, armed and talking softly. I sat up in bed. Why didn't those men stop talking? Didn't they know I was awake now? The night outside was bright as daylight. I peered out the window and gasped. Can you conjure people from dreams? A group of men sat in the front yard exactly like in my dream, armed and talking softly like it was broad daylight. They aimed to attack us. I ran down the hall to wake Martha and Ro. In an instant, they were up and looking out the window with me. They aimed to attack, I said. They know Jim's away, like they attacked Mary McCoy and Mrs. Daniels. Not while I've got any breath in me, Ro said, and she turned and ran downstairs. We followed. In the kitchen, she took up a long rifle from next to the fireplace. What will you do? Martha stood there, wringing her hands. I can shoot, Rose said. It's the one good thing John's Hatfield taught me. She unbolted the door and stepped out on the porch, the rifle set under her arm. Can I help you, gentlemen? They stopped talking. There were at least 6 of them, masked. Martha and I cowered just inside. These men could kill us all if they took the notion, or beat us and make us cripples like Mrs. Daniels. Beside me, I felt Martha trembling. One of them urged his horse forward and spoke. That you, Rosanna McCoy? It's me, the fallen woman of Pike County. Soft laughter. We got no quarrel with you, just came to warn Mrs. McCoy there. She'd better tell her husband to leave off hunting Hatfields. Roe had the gun aimed right at him. She heard you. Now get off her land and take your low-down women-beating men with you. That's right unkind, Rosanna. We don't beat up women. Tell that to Mary McCoy and her mother-in-law. Now get. John's taught me to use this. Unbelievably, they went, turned, pretty as you please, and rode off. Roe set down the gun and leaned against the door jamb. Martha hugged her. I'm so proud of you. You're so brave. I looked at my sister Rosanna, and what I saw was not relief in her face, but disappointment. She was sorry they didn't attack, I thought. She still wants to die. The thought struck me full face. I wanted to throw up. Without another word, I left the two women standing there, talking and consoling, and ran upstairs to bed. Chapter 29, Spring 1887. I was 14, the oldest in my class. At 14, most girls left school, but nobody said anything, so I kept going. I helped Mr. Cuslin with the little kids. He said I was right smart, that I should think about going to normal school and become a teacher. You'd have to go to Wirt County in West Virginia to school, he said. They're turning out good teachers there, and many will be teaching here in Kentucky. I thanked him for his interest. But I can't go to school in West Virginia, I said. If you pass the exam, you won't have to worry about tuition. I'll see to it that you don't. It isn't that, I looked at him. No McCoy goes into West Virginia. They'd be shot dead in their tracks. Just yesterday, my brother Jim and a deputy were caught there hunting Hatfields. Old Devil Anse made them kneel. Said they were going to die. The other deputy knelt, but not Jim. He opened his shirt and said, shoot. I'd just as lief die standing on my feet. But he wasn't shot, was he? Mr. Cuslin said. No, sir, because Devil Anse said he was too brave. I'm not brave. They'd shoot me. He looked so sad then. Well, he said, maybe when this trouble's over, think on it. If he'd said I should go to Paris, France, it couldn't have been stranger to me. I can't conjure up a life away from my family, Mr. Cuslin. Besides, I'm Ma's mainstay. Alfair's gone most of the time on her healing missions. Adelaide's working with Aunt Corey to become a granny woman. Ma faints a lot. She needs me. He said something funny then. Fanny, he said, sometimes we don't have to leave in order to get away. Sometimes all we have to do is choose. Chapter 30, December 31st, 1887. I was 14, and it was the last day of the year. I worked alone in the kitchen, making a supper for the occasion. Brunswick stew simmered on the stove. I was frying up a heap of potatoes. I'd made light bread and carrot pudding for dessert. Paul had been gone all day, but that was nothing new. It seemed of late that I didn't have a Pa at all. He was either gone on raids in West Virginia or stone silent when he was home. Same with Calvin. We'd been lucky to get the hogs slaughtered this year. Pa and Calvin had been all day in Pikeville. Ma was most of the day in her room. As if her fainting fits weren't enough, she now had influenza. Last time I checked her, she was praying that Adelaide and Alfair would get home without being ambushed. In December, Pa and my brothers and a new deputy sheriff, name of Frank Phillips, had brought in Wall Hatfield, Devil Anse's brother. The whole month had been taken up with a trial. We just about had Christmas. Wall was sentenced to life in prison for his part in my brother's killings. But everybody said it was illegal because he'd been kidnapped from West Virginia. And while they were arguing should there be a new trial, Wall Hatfield up and died in prison. Pa and Calvin had left to meet with men in Pikeville at first light. Before he left, Pa told me to keep the doors locked. He was afraid of reprisals. Lord, I don't have time to think of reprisals. I raced around like a chicken chased by a fox all day, caring for Ma, cooking, milking the cows, feeding the dogs, pigs, chickens, and horses. It had commenced to snow about 2 in the afternoon. When I was bringing the milk cans in, I was looking down, for the snow was in my eyes. Then halfway between the barn and the house, I heard it. The hissing, the growl. I stopped dead in my tracks and looked up. There, by the corn crib, was Yeller Thing, standing still so's I got to look at him for the first time. Seemed like a cross between a wolf and a painter cat. Looked about starved, too. His head hung low and his eyes glowed at me. His tongue hung out about a foot long. Appeared pure worn down like he needed a tonic. I knew it was Yeller Thing for the stink of him. For a full minute, we just stared at each other through the snow. "What you want with me?" I asked. He only growled, "You go away. You've a moose." I don't know what made me brave. I was worn down myself from working. My hands were freezing, and now I had to worry about Adelaide and Alifair getting home safe too. "That's what you come to tell me? Well, my sisters will be right fine. You'll see." I went on with my milk cans. Mangy old dog is what he was. I wasn't a child anymore to be afeared of him. Just about then, Adelaide drove in. She went about in a little cart that Floyd had made her. "Stop by Mr. Chasen's to treat his arthritis," she said. He allowed how he thought the Hatfields would be on the warpath on account of Wald dying. "We didn't kill him," I reminded her. He said he heard they're tired of hiding in the mountains. They've had to sell off land to buy food because they couldn't farm, and to pay for men, guns, and lawyers. We stamped the snow off our feet. "Can't we talk about something else? Did you remember to give Ma her medicine?" "Yes." She insisted that Ma have her blood purifier. She mixed a spoonful of sulfur in a pint of honey. She took it, but I still think we should call Dr. Gray. "She'll be better soon. No need for Dr. Gray." I slammed the lid down on the Brunswick stew. "Tomorrow, I'm fetching him." "Heavens, fetch him, do. You'll see I'm right." She tossed her head and ran upstairs. Pa and Calvin came in next, worn down and freezing. I fetched Pa's slippers, got Calvin some rum. Then came Alifair. I breathed a sigh of relief. My family was home safe. "You see, Yeller Thing," I thought, as Ma said the prayer, "your day is over. My sisters are home and safe." Funny how things come back to you. I remember how careful I was to store those leftovers after supper, how I cleaned up the kitchen. Ma went to bed directly after supper. Alifair and Adelaide went upstairs to confer. Calvin read a newspaper. He was 24, tall and lanky. I thought about offering him one of the new books Mr. Cousin had given me, another Dickens novel. But then he took up his Trixie and commenced to clean it. I waited for him to speak to me. When he didn't, I said goodnight and went to my own room to read. They've asked me about it since. So many people. "What did you first hear? Was it late? Were you the first awake?" It's all a jumble to me. Noise, shrieks, crashing glass. I only know we went to bed in a warm, darkened house. My supper had been good. Everybody said so. My family was home safe, so there was no sense in even thinking of Yeller Thing. An old mangy dog is all he was, all he'd ever been. Too many stories of haints in these parts was the trouble. My last thought was to fetch Dr. Gray tomorrow for Ma. Pa was worried about her. I'd ride myself and fetch him after Adelaide left. No sooner had I closed my eyes, it seemed, than the sickening sound of crashing glass woke me. Then There was the crack of a gunshot and a thud as it hit the pine log walls of the house. My first thought was that something had exploded downstairs. Had I left the Brunswick stew on the stove? Once my feet were on freezing floors, I knew it was not the Brunswick stew. I'd put that away. Then I heard Calvin's racing feet in the hall, his cry, "Hatfields, Pa! They're attacking!" Everybody was running then. My sisters raced downstairs in flannel nightgowns, and I followed. Pa was buttoning his shirt and grabbing a gun. Against the white snow outside, the jagged glass of the kitchen window was outlined. Frigid air came in. Calvin was fastening on his gun belt. "Out by the corn crib, appears to be a bunch of them." I stood stock still. The corn crib? Yeller thing. He was real. Again, he'd come to warn me. "Put your mother back to bed," Pa ordered me. There was Ma leaning on a chair in the kitchen, looking like a scarecrow. Adelaide started leading her upstairs when Calvin ran to kiss her. "Don't worry none, Ma, they won't get in. They'll have to kill me first." Then he looked at Pa. "Up to the loft, Pa. That's where we have the advantage. You girls stay away from the windows." "Come on out, Rennell," the voice boomed outside. Jim Vance. "Come on out and surrender if you want to save your family." Pa? Surrender? I guess that's when I knew it was over. He'd die first. We all would. That's when I knew we were finished. Chapter 31, December 31st, 1887. We're on page 189 if you're just joining us. It went on for what seemed like hours. The shouts of the men outside, the gunfire, the scrambling inside, the footsteps and shouts of Paul and Calvin upstairs. "Come on out, Rennell," the voices kept demanding. "Come on out. We want you. We're sick and tired of your coming into West Virginia and making us hide away from our homes and womenfolk. We aim to make you pay for while dying in prison. We want this over now." Adelaide cried. She clung to me in the kitchen where we hunkered low by the old cast iron stove and cried and trembled like a baby. "They aim to kill us, Fanny." I held on to her. "They won't. Paul and Calvin won't let them. If only we had more men." "I should get my coat on and run for Floyd," I said. I was sure I could sneak out, but every time I made a move to leave her, Adelaide clung to me. "Don't go. Don't leave me." So I stayed, to hear bullets thudding into the house walls, to hear the shouts and cusses and threats from the men outside, the braying and barking of our dogs, Adelaide's wailing, Calvin's voice upstairs, every once in a while pause, to shiver in my nightdress next to Adelaide, even though we were beside the stove. "Maybe we should go upstairs with Ma and Alifair," Adelaide said. I thought that a good idea, but just as we were pondering it, the light in the kitchen changed. A yellow glow cast on the walls from outside. Adelaide raised her head to see and gasped, "They've got pine knot torches." "We're going to set the house afire, Rennell," King shouted, "less'n you come out now." The only answer was a volley of shot from the upstairs windows. Each time the guns fired, I jumped. The sound was so sickening. It echoed in the cold air. Next thing we heard was a terrible scream. "I've been hit! I've been hit!" we heard from outside. "That's it, Rennell." And with that, another kitchen window smashed on the front wall, and a flaming bunch of faggots made crackling brightness where no brightness should be, in the middle of the kitchen floor. At once the bundle of twigs flared orange, eating, devouring. Then came another, and another, and another followed, making a circle of flame and smoke that filled my eyes and brain, destroying the herbs hanging from the rafters, Ma's calico curtains, making new curtains of thick, sour smoke. I had to get us out. "Come on," I said, "upstairs, Adelaide." I had to drag her. We bumped into Calvin and Paul scrambling down. "The kitchen's on fire," I choked out the words. "Alifair, come on down here and get to the buckets," Calvin yelled. We kept buckets of water in the house just in case of fire, maybe 3, at the most 4. The flames in the kitchen were growing, hissing, growling like some live beast. I stood there staring, thinking, now we won't have the Brunswick stew to eat anymore. And it was so good. Then somebody pushed me aside. Alifair, I heard Calvin yell again. Then I saw Alifair go right through the smoke, grab up the buckets, and start throwing the water on the flames. The puncheon floor was warm, smoldering under my bare feet. Flames lapped at the beamed ceiling, feeding on everything in sight. The heat was near suffocating. Calvin and Paul were firing out the kitchen windows. Paul's shirt was smoldering and back. Alifair threw some water on it. We need more water, Calvin, she yelled. It's all give out. I saw Calvin turn from the window, waving his arms like some haint in the smoke. One arm held Trixie. We gotta have more, Calvin, Alifair said, or we'll be burned out. We'll be forced out, and they'll kill us all. Can you sneak out to the well and get some? They were standing not 3 feet from each other, but yelling through the smoke because Paul was firing out, and the men outside were firing in. Alifair already had her coat on over her nightgown. Smoke and flames were coming up through the floorboards now. By God, Calvin yelled, they've put more torches under the house. I'm going out now, Alifair said. She grabbed up a bucket. They'll shoot you, Paul yelled. I thought he hadn't been listening, but he had. It's either that or they shoot us all, Alifair told him. Anyways, even they aren't low down enough to shoot a woman fetching water to save her house. And then she was gone, through the smoke, out the back door and into the yard. Alifair, Adelaide screamed and tried to follow her. Don't go, please. Grab your sister, Paul yelled, and shut her up. Get out of this room and see them all. I took a hold of Adelaide, who was screaming like a painter cat. I dragged her out of the kitchen. There was a sight of smoke in it now. I didn't know how Pa and Calvin were able to breathe, except that they were firing out of open windows. Every once in a while, one of the shots from outside the house would thud against the walls. Sounds were soft thuds, but horrible. Under my bare feet, I felt broken glass. I tripped over something wooden, near fell, and righted myself. The world seemed to be gone howling mad all around me. Then of a sudden, the fearsome noise outside stopped. A man's voice yelled, halt there. Who goes? Rennell? Have you come out? Stop firing, boys. And Alifair's voice in return. It's me, Alifair. Is that you, Cap Hatfield? It's me. Well, I come out for some water because my kitchen is burning. My kitchen, Cap Hatfield. And to me, it's sacred. And all this fracas, did we ever come and burn your kitchen? I couldn't hear his reply. Adelaide was blubbering in my ear. Hush, I shook her. If you don't go back in the house, Alifair, I'm going to have to shoot you, came the voice that allowed he was Cap. You? Shoot me? And Alifair laughed. We went to school together, Cap. I know you're big and bad now, but not big and bad enough to shoot a woman, are you? Silence, except for the crackling of flames where the fire hadn't yet been dampened. Terrible silence. Then a shot, ringing and certain in the cold. Then Alifair's voice, strong no more, but begging, dear God, sweet Jesus, growing weaker and weaker. Then nothing. Adelaide broke loose from me and made yelled, damn varmints, they shot Alifair. Paul yelled and made for the door then too, but Calvin held him back. She's on the ground, Paul. She ain't moving. She's dead. Go out there and you're next. I need you in here, Paul, or they'll kill us all. Hold on to your sister. Paul shoved Adelaide at me. He looked like some demented god as he turned again to the window and recommenced firing. Then Adelaide broke from me and ran to the hall and stood screaming, Ma, Ma, they shot Alifair. But Ma was already coming down the steps, her long hair around her shoulders, her bony hands groping the walls. My Alifair? They shot her? Let me through. Nobody could stop her. When Paul tried, she seized up a piece of broken glass and threatened him with it. And with Isaiah, and I stay at my post through all the watches of the night. Then she went out into the night. Cover her, Calvin told Pa. I could see Ma leaning over Adelaide and glaring up at a masked somebody who stood over her. His eyes reflected the firelight, glowed like yellow thing. Get back inside, old hag. Ma stood up and raised her fist. I will encamp like David amongst you. I will encircle you with outposts and set up siege works against you. Prostrate you shall speak from the earth. I recollect thinking how right brave Ma was, and how I could never be. Then the man raised his gun and swung it back, and I yelled, no, no. I lunged, and then it was Adelaide holding me back as the gun cut the cold night air and hit Ma. Again and again. Calvin charged out the door next into the yawning dark and raced to the corn crib, making it there somehow, then raised Trixie to take aim and was cut down by a ringing shot. No, no, I was yelling at that, and Adelaide was holding me. Pa was bellowing for Adelaide to take me into the woods, to go out the back window. I stumbled along after Adelaide, followed her out the window like I was in a dream. Feeling colder and stiller than Ma and Calvin and Alifair, colder and stiller than the freezing night air that filled up my lungs, then seeped forever into my heart. Chapter 32, January 1888. Me and Adelaide made for the woods. In the midnight cold, bare feet, we found our way, huddling and shivering together, to my old playhouse, where I found a tattered quilt to wrap us in. From there, we could see our house burning, flames reaching into the night sky, smoke billowing. And against the firelit night, men dashing about, staining the earth with their shadows. Oh, what beautiful language, staining the earth with their shadows. We waited, shivered, sobbed, and prayed while night owls hooted and all around us. The stark trees shielded us as their own. Though I'm sure they didn't want us as their own, tainted as we were. I'm sure they'd just as lief we left the quiet solitude they offered and went back into the howling world of madness as we had made it to be. By first light, the men were gone. Our house was a charred ruin with only the chimney still standing like a question mark against the lead sky. Paul came out of the hog pen where he'd stayed the night and ran for Floyd, who sent for Jim and Sam. They took Calvin and Alifair and covered them decent-like against the prying eyes of others who came to see. They took Ma up in a wagon. She was more dead than alive and with no sense about her whatsoever, which was a blessing of the Lord. Then they found me and Adelaide and carried us in blankets to a home that no longer was. Then we went with Ma to the Klein house where Rosanna waited. They said I kept babbling about how I had to go into the house and get the leftover Brunswick stew or we'd starve. I don't recollect that. I haven't made Brunswick stew since. Likely, I'll never make it again. When they laid Calvin and Alifair to rest in graves next to Farmer, Tolbert, Bud, and Bill, I wasn't there. I was in Aunt Martha Klein's house, petting her cat and sitting in a corner with a comforter around me. Shadows and voices came and went all around me. When a loud noise happened, I jumped. They say I was off my feed for a week, that I wouldn't let Rosanna near me, that Aunt Martha had to spoon broth into my mouth, that Dr. Gray had come and gone and said I might never talk again, or I might speak in tongues at supper. He couldn't rightly say. I didn't speak in tongues at supper, but after about a week, I started talking to the cat. They let me be. I knew that Ma was upstairs in her room, pure give out. Might be she wouldn't live. Reverend Thompson came. Trinville and Will came. Pa came. Even Mr. Cousin came with books for me. I seized on the books and started reading about other worlds and other peoples who had terrible heartache, who sweated blood for their dreams and cried in pain for their loves, and whose lives were all better than mine. Adelaide wasn't with us. She went right to Aunt Corey's to stay. to go on with her granny work like nothing had happened. They say it was her way of not speaking or talking only to a cat or losing herself in books. They say when I started to speak again, I said I had to do the chores. I kept wandering out in the cold to milk Aunt Martha's cows. That when they tried to stop me, I cried and allowed how Alifair would hold my head under the pump if I didn't get those cows milked right quick. I recollect none of it at all. All the newspapers said the attack on our house was the worst yet in the history of Kentucky, that not even the Indians who had once lived here and slaughtered settlers had done as bad as was done to us. I do own that I recollect 2 things that happened in that time. Pa came to Aunt Martha's and told Rosanna, who was nursing Ma, that it was all her fault. He didn't hold forth. He said it real quiet-like, but I heard. If you hadn't run off with Johns, he told her, none of it would have happened. And I mind that once Ro came to where I was sitting with the cat in my lap, knelt on the floor in front of me. I'm so sorry, Fanny, she said. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was talking by then, though not much. I petted the cat's head and looked at my sister. Well, now, I said, you can just go and put Alifair's and Calvin's coffins in the middle of that quilt of yourn, can't you? She didn't know what all to say to that, of course. She just put her head down and sobbed. Then she stopped and looked at me again. Isn't there anything I can do to make you forgive me? She asked. Until that minute, I couldn't think of a thing. But then I did. There is something. Yes, baby, anything. I'd admire for you to leave me alone. Never did I reckon I would say such. Never did I mean it so much either. Chapter 33. Spring 1888. I came back to being myself, of course, or whatever of myself I could still find. I had to. Our family didn't hold with self-pity. Everybody had their duties and was expected to do their best soon as they felt middling well. I helped Aunt Martha a bit around the house. I visited with Ma. Pa was away most all the time with posses he formed. The county judge himself, Mr. Tobias Wagner, went to Frankfort to get arms for Pa and his men. I don't know where they kept them, but not in our new house in Pikeville that we moved into that spring. Ma wouldn't countenance it, she said. No guns in this house. I won't have it, Rennell. If I ever see a Winchester or even a Colt pistol, I'll get a smothering fit for sure. Ma got smothering fits all the time now. While we were at Aunt Martha Klein's, Ro nursed Ma. I know it to be true that it was only Ro's nursing that brought Ma round again. You have to give the devil his due. Come right down to it. It wasn't nary a one of Adelaide's remedies, though she tried half a dozen. Not even Alifair's faith healing group, who came one day and prayed over Ma and anointed her with oil, and acted like they expected her to get up and start dancing to fiddle music at supper. She didn't, and they went away disappointed, leaving Ma in tears with only Ro to comfort her, because at that time I was still talking only to the cat. But my sister Ro brought Ma back with her care and soft words. Seems like she never left Ma's side in the month after the attack. By spring, Ma was able to get off her couch and wobble around with the cane a little. She was all crooked like a bent tree. She couldn't hold her head straight, had to turn her whole body to look at you in the face. But she still praised Jesus every chance she got. In April, we moved into the Pikeville house, and Ro came along with us. Nobody asked her. Nobody told her she couldn't. We just all knew Ma couldn't do without her. So she came. But we still didn't talk much, me and Ro. We exchanged sentences is what we did. Did Ma eat any of her supper, she'd ask. I'd answer no. Then she'd ask when Pa was expected home, or would I go to the store for her. And I'd answer, but we didn't speak to each other, only at each other. I guess we both just knew there was nothing more to say. All that summer, Pa, his men, and my brothers raided West Virginia and brought back men who'd attacked our house that night. On one of those trips, they brought in Ellison mounts. I hated the house in Packville from the minute we moved in. It was a small dwelling, not like our place on Blackberry Creek. The only good part was the river out back. I'd go down there of a summer afternoon, read and watch fishermen go by in small boats. They came regular like, and after a while would wave at me. I'd wave back. There was one man who wore a wool hat, even in the middle of summer. Another brought his small grandson along. Still another had a small black dog in the boat with him. I'd conjure up lives for them, families, homes. Someone said that creek found its way to West Virginia. I worried some that Hatfields would learn where we lived now and come by boat to attack us. But it didn't happen, and so I stopped worrying. In September, I wanted to go back to school, but it was too far, so Mr. Cousin came once a week to tutor me. He wouldn't take any money for it either. All he wanted, he said, was for me to study, serious-like, on the idea of going to normal school and becoming a teacher. I looked forward to his visits more than I liked to lay claim to, but I couldn't bring my mind around to thinking on becoming a teacher. In my head, there was no future for any of us at all. Chapter 34, Fall, 1889. The reason I know that Ellison Mounts didn't kill my sister Alfair is more than because I heard Cap Hatfield talking with her that night just before she was shot. It's because Reverend Thompson told me. It was September. Paul was on another raid. Aunt Martha Klein had come to the little house in Packville to visit Mom like she did every so often. I was in the parlor studying. My sister Roe was upstairs in bed. She'd been sickly for the last month, and nobody knew what ailed her. But while the bright blue skies of fall and the flaming colors baking outside, inside Roe roamed the house in her nightdress, not talking, not eating, just telling us all to leave her be, and getting thinner and thinner. Adelaide, who came home once a month like our sheep used to, had doused her with remedies a week ago. Nothing. To visit Trinville and Will. He'd built a new house there last summer. It was Aunt Martha's idea that I go. I needed to get out of the house, she said. She and Ma were in the kitchen talking. I just can't stop her now, Ma was saying. His mind is set on all this killing. Then don't stop him, Aunt Martha Klein said. He's got no more home place, no more crops. He's got only his kin to revenge. It's proper for him to bring the Hatfields to justice, Sarah. How can it be proper to kill? Aunt Martha Klein's voice rose. You preached prayer instead of action to your husband for so long, Sarah. You'd still have all your children if you hadn't. And now you've got Rosanna failing. Rosanna's grieving because she heard Nancy is to wed Frank Phillips. She's grieving for that scoundrel Johns, Ma said. All she needs is a tonic. Aunt Martha made a scoffing sound. You live in your own world, Sarah. You always did. I suppose Reverend Thompson was kin to me, being father-in-law to my sister. I just couldn't think of a reverend as kin. I had trouble sitting at table with him, watching him eat and talk of everyday things. But it never bothered Trinville at all. It was part and parcel of how she changed since that day of her wedding, I suppose. She was a full woman at 21 with notions from living in Baltimore, with her own house spread around her, a baby in a cradle, and a lawyer husband. She headed up committees in her father-in-law's church. I lost her again before I'd found her. Snobbish she was. It was the only word I could put to how she acted. Confused as I was, I had to find meaning where I could. How's Rosanna? Reverend Thompson asked when there was a lull in conversation. Middlin', I answered. Ma can't put a finger on what's ailing her. He smiled. I spoke to Jones just yesterday. I gaped, waiting. Something was coming, I was sure of it. I minister to folk on both sides of the river, Fanny. You must remember that. I take pride that both Hatfields and McCoys trust me. I like to think I've quenched some fires on both sides and kindled some understanding. Yes, sir. He was rooting around it like a hound dog, all that talk of quenching and kindling fires. I looked at my sister. Under the soft light of the kerosene lamps, she glowed. Whatever he was getting at, she knew about it. Imagine, I thought, being privy to what a reverend was thinking. Johnson's worried about Rosanna, he said. He heard she was took sick, and he asked after your ma, too. I bridled. He's got more nerve than a Yankee at a Southern camp meeting, I said, after they raided our house that night. Now, Fanny, the Reverend said soothingly. Johnson wasn't there that night. I can vouch for that. You think he'd be part of that killing and maiming? He still loves Rosanna. Before I could give my opinion on that bit of hogwash, he went on. Jim Vance attacked your ma. Johnson's brother Cap shot Alathair. Then why have they got Ellison Mounts in prison for it? Because, he answered softly, Cap promised Mounts $500, a rifle, and a saddle if he'd take the blame. Promised he'd spring him from jail before they hanged him. I stared at the man in disbelief, then at my sister and Will. Trinvilla smiled in a way that made me want to smack her the way I did when she tattled on me to Alathair. It's true, she said. What's it all got to do with me? I asked, in a spirit of godly forgiveness and forbearance that I myself preach and your sister and brother-in-law practice in this home. The Reverend said, I have a letter to row from Johns. I'd like for you to deliver it to her. I felt a blinding light behind my eyes. My head hurt. My food turned to sawdust in my mouth. Aunt Martha Klein was just this day telling Ma how foolish she was with all her forgiveness and praying, I said, and how she'd let Pa go after the Hatfield sooner my brothers in Alathair might still be alive. Nobody said anything for a minute. Trinvilla made a to-do about pouring coffee. I suppose she learned how to pour real fancy-like from all those ladies' meetings she went to in church. She was getting notions, that's what her problem was. Thought she was too good for us anymore. What does Johns want from Roe? I asked the preacher. Just to see her. As I said, he's heard she's failing. He loves her still, Trinvilla put in. I scowled. I suppose there's no sense in asking why you care when you always hated Roe. Her smile was like a knife. It was kindly but bespoke things between them that I was too young to understand. We were all children back then, Fanny, she said. We're all grown now. Johns can be grown as last year's corn. There's no way he can come into Kentucky and see Roe without his being killed, I told her. He's been here many times, the Reverend said. To this house? I asked. The Reverend stirred sugar into his coffee. Haven't you ever seen the man in the wool hat and the rowboat on the river? He's seen you. Said you waved to him many a time. Now I felt like I was out in the windy night looking into the window at them. The man in the woolen hat, Johns Hatfield? Why did he never give me his howdy if it was him? He didn't want to put you in a compromising position. What's that? He didn't, Trinvilla explained, want to make you waver between telling Pa he was there and loyalty to him. I've got no loyalty to Johns Hatfield, I said. Does that mean you won't deliver the note to Roe then? The Reverend asked. I don't know what it means. I have to study on it. He put his hand inside his coat pocket and something crackled. Paper. He drew out the note to set it on the table next to me. Why don't you leave it to your sister? She wants to see him. Why don't you deliver the note to Roe? I asked him. I have to leave for Pennsylvania in the morning. My sister has died. It will be an extended stay. Where would this meeting take place? He'd come in his wool hat on the river and expect her to come sashaying down the bank in the cold and dark? In this house, the Reverend said. It is a safe house. Neither side comes here. It'll be right cold soon, Will put in, and the fall rains will come, making the roads muddy. There's no way we could justify a trip here for an ailing Roe if we wait much longer. They were all in on it. Had it planned. It was why they'd invited me. Not because they cared about me. I took the note from the table and put it in my pocket. Safe house? I almost laughed in their full faces. I'd come and look what had happened. I'd been lured, trapped. Crazy they all were, I decided. Plumb crazy. Chapter 35. Fall 1889. I suppose I could have done it. What reason not to, after I got shut of my anger at prissy old Trinvilla, who was turning out worse than Alathair had ever been, who still hated Rose, just playing some part for her reverend father-in-law. I saw no reason not to do it. I went home set on doing it. What did I care for Owen John Smith? What did I care about any of them anymore? Look what Karen had done to me. I was mooted up all the time and worrying, and there was Trinvilla, happy and loved and out of it all, yet feeling good about herself. It meant no never mind to her if Rowan Johnson met. Why should it matter to me? Then I looked at Ma, all crippled up and scarce able to walk. I thought of Bud, Bill, Farmer, Tolbert, Calvin, and even Alifair, all of them lying underground, all who should still be living. Even Alifair, mean as a hornet as she'd been, and I thought how I couldn't dishonor them like that by bringing together the two people who had started this whole mess. So I went home and put the note under my pillow, ate supper, saw to row, and went to bed, as muddled in the head as I'd ever been. Next day, Dr. Gray came to visit Roe. Ma had sent for him. He was in that room a while with her, I can tell you. Then he talked a while with Ma. I waited in the parlor to see him out. On the front stoop, I drew a shawl around me in the late September chill and squinted up at him in the midday sun. "How's Roe faring, doctor?" "Well, I'll tell you, Fanny, because you're old enough to know." "How old are you now?" 16. "Your ma's not fit to hear it. Your pa's not around, and Rose seems not to care. I think if you all could get her interested in something, might be she'd take a turn for the better." "Interested?" "She's dying inside her, Fanny. Dying from the inside out, the worst kind of ailment. Nothing a doctor can do for her. She needs hope." I nodded. Sounded like so much falderall to me, like the kind of thing doctors said when they couldn't cure you. "I know you all been through a heap of trouble, but your sister just needs something now to make her want to get well." "What?" I asked. "She's your sister, Fanny." He patted my arm. "Now I've got to go." So that's when I decided to give her the note that lay at that moment in my apron pocket. That's when I decided to dishonor Tolbert, Farmer, Bud, Bill, Calvin, and Alifair. They'd want me to do it, I pondered, even Alifair. I was sure she would. I waited all day, but Mom was always around. Then some snoopy old ladies from church came. Not Reverend Thompson's church, but the Baptist one in town. Brought food and baked goods, and we had to fuss over them and be nice. And then Rose left, and I didn't want to bother her. Then it came around to supper time, and I had to see to it that Ma ate and got her to bed. I went to my room, and while I waited for Ma to fall asleep, I fell asleep too, and awoke like somebody put a hand on me to hear noise downstairs. I jumped up, real scared like. Were we being attacked? I crept down the stairs, and there in the kitchen was Rowan in her nightdress, walking around with a lantern in her one hand and dragging something that looked like a dead body in the other. "What are you doing up and about?" I asked her. "What have you got there?" "Oh, Fanny." She set the lantern on the kitchen table. "I just had a hankering for some tea. I couldn't sleep. I thought I'd come down here for a while and work on my quilt." So that's what she was dragging around. Might as well have been a dead body. I made her some tea. The candlelight threw our shadows against the wall larger than life. Wondered if Johns was out on the river in his boat, wearing that wool cap, washing the house. Wondered how many times he'd been out there and we hadn't known it. Set the tea down. "You're so good to me, Fanny," she said. I got to feeling all twisted inside when she said that, I can tell you. She was lifting the quilt from the floor and spreading it on her lap. Hard to work without a frame, but I've gotten used to it. I just do a little piece at a time. Hard to work in candlelight, too. I wish Ma would allow kerosene. I still had the note in my pocket. This was the time to give it to her, I minded now. Then she looked at me, all hollow around the eyes and thin in the face, and smiled. "Want to ask you something, Fanny?" I nodded. "Are you ready to now promise to take my quilt? I asked you once before. You said you'd study on it. Don't say no, please. It means so much to me. I know you don't like it, don't approve, but I want it to go to somebody I love." "You're not going to die," I said. It was all I could think of. My throat wasn't working right. I loved Ro, much as I ever had, I suppose, and I hated her all at the same time. She'd always been the special one in the family, the one everybody gave in to, because she was so pretty. I looked up to her so, and now here she sat, empty and pitiful, the cause of all of our troubles. Oh, God, I wanted to give her that note. I did. You see here, she was bent on showing me that full quilt. Look how pretty it is. I am going to die, Fanny. I've got nothing to live for. Don't want to live anymore anyways. A person can will themselves to die, you know. I thought I built that in how sweet he could play the fiddle, how he'd frozen to death on that hill by the graves, willing himself to die. And I hated her again. She had the quilt spread on the table. Her work was so neat, her stitches so small. Isn't it a beauty? She asked. I looked, and I saw, there in the light of the candle, among the coffins all around the edges that still had to be moved to the middle, was mine, and hers, and Ma's and Paul's, Jim's and Sam's and Floyd's, Trinvilla's and her babies, Tolbert's baby, Cora. I stared at them and felt the rage go through me. Then I looked up at her, smiling at me like that, and I saw the bones in her face without the flesh, the eye sockets without the eyes, the teeth without the lips, grinning at me. Ain't it purty? I saw in the light of the single candle that I had known inside me all along. Ro was kin somehow to evil. She courted it, beautiful as she was. There was something about her that flirted with it like moths flirted with flames. That day of the election so long ago now, when she'd gone off with Johns and been flirting with it. Much as she'd been flirting with him. She sought destruction of herself, and she dragged so many of us with her. In that moment, I knew I would never give her the note from Johns. And I recollected what Mr. Cuslin once told me. Sometimes we don't have to leave to get away. Sometimes we just have to choose. I chose. I loved her. I still did. But I knew the world for all of us would be to get away